well, they told us he's going to show up at the Staples Center to go ahead and get like a scouting report on both you guys. What do you make of what you can present to Manny at this point, given his age, and what would happen in that fight if you are victorious?
I think, just a great fight. I mean, much respect to him. He's a, Hall of Famer and real legend of the sport that's fighting right now at the top level. Just seeing, how he beat Keith Thurman, I think, that'd be a great fight. And, I'll have 2 of the belts. He has 1 belt, so I think that'd be a really, really great, interesting fight.
Closing this out, Errol, I just want to get your response to Timothy Bradley saying that you're avoiding Terence Crawford, that everybody on the PBC side is avoiding Terence Crawford. What's your response to what he said over the weekend in an interview?
I mean, how am I avoiding him if I'm fighting in a unification fight with Sean Porter? I mean, a top 5 welterweight. So, I mean, last time I remember, the WBC ordered me and him to fight each other, and, he didn't take the fight, so... I mean, nobody's avoiding Terence Crawford. There's big fish on this side, too, that, I got to fry. So, I mean, once I get rid of Pacquiao and Sean Porter, then we can, sit down and talk about Terence Crawford. But nobody's avoiding him. Like I said, I'm going to get these belts over here. Then I'm going to come take Terence Crawford belt because I said I'm going to be undisputed welterweight champion of the world. So, the only way to make that happen is to take his belt. So, I mean, nobody's avoiding him.
Earl?
So, fight fans, just letting you guys listen to one of the latest interviews by Marcos Villegas, and he was interviewing Errol Spence. And Errol Spence said that nobody is avoiding Terence Bud Crawford. He said that his goal is to become undisputed. And after he takes Manny Pacquiao and Porter's, he can sit down and talk about fighting Terence Crawford and then take his belt. Now, me hearing this, it sounds good to say. Sounds good to say. I guess it sounds a little better to hear. And I notice how people word things. He said after Porter, then after his fight with Pacquiao, then he'll sit down. Like, look, you don't have to sit down with anything, with anybody about a fight that you want. That does not work. We already seen what is in store for Errol Spence. Terence Crawford is not that guy. They're trying to wait him out. They know he is older than Errol Spence. I think he's a few years older than Errol Spence. They're relying on the reflexes, the aura and invincibility, the prime Terence Crawford to wear off. That's their goal. They want to play the waiting game. He's like, oh, nobody's avoiding him. And if you noticed, he said, well, how am I avoiding him when I'm doing a unification with Sean Porter? Well, when the WBC ordered it, he said he had mandatories, right? Instead of fighting for a unification. Unification trumps a mandatory. So Sean Porter wasn't really interested in fighting Errol Spence at the time. And he almost got his ass whooped. In fact, I feel he did get his ass whooped by Yordenis Ugas. I think he gave him the business. I believe he got knocked down in the 12th round. And that's that. Okay? Now, if you know a fighter was avoiding you, why didn't you go to the next fighter? He knew Keith Thurman didn't want to fight him, right? With the WBA, because he was injured. He knew that Porter avoided him by alluding to his mandatories, right? And he has the IBF. So what's left? The WBO. Terence Crawford had the WBO. That fight should have happened before any of these other fights. A unification. What difference is a unification compared to another unification with another sanctioning body? Nothing. See, the problem with the PBC side, the problem with these guys and Al Heyman and shit like that, they pretend like they're the only ones on the planet that exists. especially when, you know, they sit around and bullshit and pick or contemplate and tease the idea of certain fights being made until they finally get made. They do all these other little bullshit fights first, and then they kind of build up to that fight. You know, instead of, everyone knew when the Keith Thurman and Errol Spence fight, when that shit collapsed, okay, when no one was interested in that fight anymore. Keith Thurman had went under the radar with injuries or whatnot. You know, that fight was the fight that was brewing. People started looking. People started matchmaking. Wait a minute, Terence Crawford is coming from 140 after cleaning out the division. Now he's at welterweight. And see, here's the thing. Everybody was saying Terence Crawford was too small, right? But so was Lamont Peterson. We seen the big size difference in that fight. And he was mentioned in this interview by Lamont Peterson. You know, Lamont Peterson took that fight because he's a tough guy. He wanted to challenge himself. He came up short, right? But he came up short with a bigger guy. So how can Peterson come from 140 and you fight him easily? But then Terence Crawford comes from 140. Then you guys are avoiding that WBO is even in existence. That's the trip. These guys had Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman. Okay, first of all, why you got 2 WBA belts? They were talking about referring to super titles. Why was Manny Pacquiao up there at all? It should, they didn't even recognize the WBO. They didn't even speak on the WBO. That was not by accident. That was orchestrated. That was demanded. That was requested by Al Heyman. Don't talk about the WBO because we're not promoting anybody that fights on the WBO because Terence Crawford is there. Okay? We're not even going to mention and recognize the WBO because these guys do not want to fight Terence Crawford. You know, but like he says, hey, I'm gonna take Terence Crawford's belt. That sounded so flat. If you notice, listen to how he said that. I'm gonna take his belt because, like I said, it's just like you're gonna take his belt. You gonna beat his ass? Are you gonna knock him out? Are you gonna whoop him? You didn't say any of that. You just said, I'm gonna take his belt. And like I'm telling you guys, that fight will never happen because by that time, Errol Spence, hopefully Terence Crawford will be defeated in their eyes. That's what they're hoping. But my guess is if Terence Crawford doesn't go anywhere, like I hope, what'll happen is Errol Spence will go to 154 before fighting for undisputed. That's what'll happen. That's it. That's what I see. So anyway, you guys tell me what you think about this interview. Please subscribe. And you guys have been Counterpunch. Peace.